semester, our goal is to use a sample or a subset of the population to make predictions about the whole population. And we know those predictions or estimates can be in terms of an association between variables or stronger a cause and effect between variables, depending on the design of the study. In this next section, we're going to focus on how do we choose that subset or that sample from the overall population. How we choose the sample also greatly affects the type of conclusions we can make. So we're first going to start with an example that's quite dated. You see in your notes here, this is from 1987. And I'm going to read some results from this report called the Hite Report, Women in Love, A Cultural Revolution in Progress. And as you listen to some of these results from her study, which by the way was widely reported and even a Time magazine cover story, just kind of listen to these, note what the population is, who the population is, write down one interesting result to kind of remind you of this study, and then I'm going to talk about where this data came from. So here's our results from this study. 84% of all women are not satisfied emotionally with their relationships. 70% of all women married 5 years or more are cheating on their husbands. 95% of all women report forms of emotional and psychological harassment from men with whom they are in love relationships. 84% of all women report forms of belittling from the men in their love relationships. Let me read that one more time. 84% not satisfied emotionally. 70% married 5 years or more are cheating. 95% report forms of emotional and psychological harassment. And 84% report forms of belittling from men in their love relationships. So, first of all, when I first read that, who's this population? Who are they talking about in general? Definitely all women. We heard that phrase repeatedly. And then the results, I don't know how you felt about those, but most semesters, students tell me that those numbers seem really high. The one that stands out the most to me was that one about 70% of all women married at least 5 years are cheating. I think it's 14 years this year in 2020. And the thought of cheating is just crazy. 70% cheating sounds really, really high to me. So there's probably a reason for these really high numbers, high percentages of what sound like bad relationships. So next, I'm going to read a little bit about where this data came from. So first of all, she mailed out 100,000 questionnaires and only 4.5% were returned. Let's see why. So first of all, where did she mail these? She mailed them to organizations like women's centers, counseling centers, and senior citizen centers. Not sure how that fits with the others, but you're starting to get the picture here. You're mailing them to counseling centers, for example. And then instead of being a typical, 10-question survey with circle from 1 to 10 how you feel about this, it was 127 essay questions, many of them with several parts. Who's going to tend to respond to such a survey? There's no incentive to take this survey, no, win an iPad. I guess they didn't have iPads back then, but whatever, win something, a trip to Disney if you respond. No incentive, 127 essay questions, probably just individuals that feel like finally their plights and troubles are going to be listened to and reported on and told. Also, there's a lot of vague words in there, such as love. The concept of love has many interpretations. And then there was also a lot of leading questions. Does your husband see you as an equal? Or are there times when he seems to treat you as inferior, leave you out of decisions, or act superior? So that's definitely a leading question. I would say my husband is the best guy on the whole planet. I love him dearly, but sure, he's left me out of a decision a time or two. So I would have to answer that yes, but that doesn't mean he's awful by any means. So definitely some leading questions. So now we're getting a better feel here. So sample, we'll jot down a few notes. 127 essay question mailed to counseling centers. And there were some leading questions, etc. So this is a prime example of how not to take a survey, how not to select your sample. In the next section, we're going to talk about some appropriate ways to talk about samples and give some terminology to all of this.